Welcome aboard the Fandom's Revenge. I am its captain, Dr. Disaster, and today we're going to take a look at the bad press that Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny has been getting. Now, many of you know that ever since the embargo was lifted off the film, that it has been getting blasted on Rotten Tomatoes. If you don't know what an embargo is, it's basically a promise between the film studio and professional movie critics where the studio lets the critics have early access, but the critics promise not to say anything about the movie until an agreed upon date. Usually, this is about a week or so before the movie releases, but this time around, Disney is permitting them to talk over a month in advance.
I immediately regret this decision.
Now, there's only two reasons I can think of behind why Disney would do this. Either they believed that their movie was going to get a lot of love, so they wanted to spread positive word of mouth ahead of time, or they believed the movie would get a lot of flack, and they wanted to get the reviews out as early as possible so that maybe people would forget by the time the movie came out. After all, never forget what a low opinion the people in charge of these corporations have of all of us. Well, I don't have a low opinion of you. I think those of us who have been burned by Lucasfilm too many times will not forget what this company has done. But I do have a low opinion of Disney Lucasfilm. I think their movie looks like trash, and we're going to take a look at the reviews of the movie on Rotten Tomatoes by critics who are shills for these corporations in exchange for early access that they often get. They are the most likely to at least pretend to like these movies, and they can't even pretend. That is a very bad sign. We're also going to look at some evidence which would suggest that this movie is not getting any traction with the general public. And while we're at it, let me know in the comments section, are you planning to go to this movie or not? With all the bad reviews, I'm guessing most of you will sit it out.
Get back.
Alright, let's take a look at these reviews on Rotten Tomatoes. This first one is from Jason Gorber of That Shelf. He says, this movie is fine fan fiction, employing much of what makes this character so special play out in new ways, while very much embracing the past. When it works, it's excellent. When it doesn't, you still revel in companionship of old friends. Watch the video review. He has given it a fresh rating. Not a very glowing rating. I mean, yes, it is fresh, I guess, but he does admit that at points it doesn't work. That's not particularly exciting. This one is a rotten rating from David Fear of Rolling Stone. There are needs being met here, but they aren't storytelling based so much as stoking the fan base and meeting the bottom line ones. That's actually a pretty scathing indictment of what they do at Lucasfilm in general. They are not producing art. They're not creating anything seminal or interesting. They are simply producing. This next one is from, I don't know if I'm pronouncing this right, Manu Yanez from Photogrammus. He gives it a fresh rating. The Dial of Destiny proves that it's possible to keep alive the anti-authoritarian flame and the passion for knowledge that lies at the heart of this immortal saga. Well, he gave it a fresh score, a 4 out of 5 it looks like. Steve Pond from The Wrap says, if this is the final Indiana Jones movie, as it most likely will be, it's nice to see that they stuck the landing. Well, that's pretty positive as well. Let's look at Stephanie Zacharek from Time Magazine. She says, there are so many chase sequences that the movie seems held together with slender bits of plot rather than the other way around. Worse yet, they're so heavily CGI'd that they come off as grimly dutiful rather than thrilling or delightful. That's really bad. That's really bad. When I hear about an action film being held together by CGI, I'm just repelled by that. Overuse of CGI is an awful thing. It's really awful in a action film like this, one that's supposed to be grounded. You know, when I think about Indiana Jones, I think about, you know, all these authentic shots that they did and all these practical effects that they used to create the imagery in their movies, and that, you know, they really minimized anything CGI or special effects. So to me, this is a massive, massive turnoff. I'm not even slightly interested in what they have to say if this is the case. Bilge Ebiri says, the damn thing is fun. Mangold may not have the young Spielberg's musical flair for extravagant action choreography, but he is a tougher, leaner director using a tighter frame and keeping his camera close. He gave it a fresh rating. Really sounds like he's shilling this thing. You know, good for him. I'm sure he got a really nice payday. Esther Zuckerman of the Daily Beast gave it a rotten rating. The de-aging and other CGI manipulations of Ford's body only serve to demonstrate that Dial of Destiny just wants to turn back the clock instead of doing anything new. And this, I was noticing that a lot of them mention CGI. That's really bad sign. Alright, let's take a look at James Mottram of the South China Morning Post. He gave it a fresh review. He says, director James Mangold, stepping in for Steven Spielberg, brings the character's adventures to a satisfying close, while Ford revels in reprising the role for one last hurrah. Good for you, James. Working for the South China Morning Post. Good for you. You are a very reputable person. I'm sure you didn't get paid very much at all, you know, to tell us what you think. That's fantastic. Peter Howell of the Toronto Star gave it a negative review. He said, it's all pretty goofy and laborious over its 142-minute running time. Ann Keat, I'm not even going to try to pronounce that last name, gave it a fresh rating. MacGuffin is meant to be just that, an object that characters chase after in a story. What it is and what it does doesn't usually matter. Surprisingly, it does, and gives the movie its absolutely bonkers, jaw-dropping climax. Rory OConnor of the Film Stage also gave it a positive review. It often fizzes as much as it lulls, but in Mickelson's Dr. Schmidt, the film can at least boast a worthy antagonist, and one with enough personality to cover some of those cracks. Really doesn't sound particularly positive, I guess. In this instance, Disney squeaked by with something that was barely a fresh review. Rory Doherty of Flicks gave it a negative review. He said, a film that inherits the directing mantle from Steven Spielberg should know when to step up. It's about time executives realize that franchises can't be cleanly separated from the visions and talents of those who made them. Yes, 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 this is absolutely the case. Star Wars is nothing without George Lucas. Indiana Jones is nothing without Spielberg and George Lucas. And it would be nothing without Harrison Ford. I mean, there are people who make a franchise. And you would think that Lucasfilm would know this by now. You would think that they would have learned that lesson with Star Wars, for example. You know, moving forward after the Return of the Jedi, Star Wars is nothing without the likes of Han Solo, Luke Skywalker, Princess Leia, Lando Calrissian. I could go on. We want those characters. They didn't give them to us. They failed. They're doing this sort of thing now with Indiana Jones. They think they can keep these franchises alive in perpetuity. They cannot. There was something special that made them what they were, and they don't have that magic any longer. Disney doesn't have any magic, unless you want to count black magic. Anyway, moving on. Siddhant Adlaka gave it a rotten rating, says the camera rarely creates meaning on its own except when there's a familiar brown fedora somewhere on screen, at which point it charges towards it like a happy pup reuniting with its owner, a shot that repeats on at least 4 separate occasions. I mean, yeah, that's all this is. This is just the member berries, and we're not going to be fooled into seeing this garbage. Donald Clark of the Irish Times gave it a positive review. It counts as a sort of compliment to say that James Mangold's film, until a gleefully absurd ending, plays like just another episode in a creaky, unpretentious romp. Once again, this doesn't sound positive. It must have just squeaked by with a positive review. Carlos F Herrera gave it a positive review. A more or less orthopedic chain of vibrant action set pieces. I'm not really sure what an orthopedic chain of vibrant action set pieces are, but okay. Reuben Peralta Regard gave it a rotten rating. Says, an adventure that, despite stripping itself of all fan service air, feels simulated and forced. That's pretty much par for the course. Juan Luis Caviaro, this is not my Indiana Jones. Juan, much respect. You must be one of us. He's aping our not my Luke Skywalker line. So, I mean, is this guy part of the fandom menace? If so, hey, much love, bro. Either way, yeah, that's kind of the consensus that I'm getting from this. Ianna Murray gave it a rotten rating, says it's a disappointing facsimile of the much better Indiana Jones films that preceded it. Yup. Rafael Abraham of the Financial Times gave it a positive review. What's vexing, how is it a positive review when the first thing in its top quote says that it's vexing? But, okay, I continue. What's vexing is the nagging feeling that there's a much better Indiana Jones film buried in there somewhere, but it would require a feat of archaeology, or at least a rewrite and some judicious editing to excavate it. Wow. How long did that take you to think up there, Raphael? It's, I mean, I would say it's actually not good writing. They try to teach you in college that sort of thing is good writing, but to me, it's just this side of a pun. Either way, that counts as a positive review, even though it doesn't sound particularly positive. And we'll finish up here with Stephen Garrett of The Observer says, fun isn't the most accurate way to describe its excessive antics. There's never a dull moment, but all the globe-trotting hullabaloo does verge on exhausting. Yeah, it doesn't really sound to me like they captured their audience's interest, that they really did a good job of getting people involved in this movie. It sounds like it was actually some big old garbage. So I also promised, as you may remember, to dig into some evidence that Indiana Jones is not tracking to do particularly well. Let's look at, really quick here, the Google Trends search that I did recently. I did a couple of them. I put in Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, which in this chart here is represented by the blue line. That represents how much people have been searching up this film on Google in the last year, which, as you can see here in red, then I also have Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, a film that was extraordinarily disappointing for Disney. If you look, there is a little spike here. About a month before Quantumania came out, this little spike represents when advertisements and that sort of thing started to come out. And it's really quite a bit bigger than the spike that we're seeing right now at the end of this line in blue for Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, which, you know, it still isn't as popular of a search title as Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. So, that suggests that it's not going to do very well. Let's look at this chart here, which compares Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, which is now the one in blue, and Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny in red. If you look, this spike right here represents how much people were searching up Kingdom of the Crystal Skull about a month before the film came out back in 2008. And then this little dip right here shows how much people were searching for Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny about a month before it is being released. And it's night and day. It's not even close. People are not as excited about this film as they were. It is not going to do particularly well, I don't believe. So, I just gave you a snapshot. We looked at Quantumania, one of its contemporaries. It's another action film that we can compare it to that just recently came out that didn't even do that well. It didn't even do that well. And in fact, it probably lost their studio money. And it didn't even have as large a budget as Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. So, man oh man, I have a hard time believing they're going to make anything on this piece of shit film.
Thanks for watching, me hearties. If you haven't already, your captain is inviting you to subscribe to the channel and become a part of the crew. Life as a space pirate may not be glamorous, but there's always plenty of booty.